What are the next major technological advancements in the crypto space that can fuel the next wave of adoption? Well, this is quite literally the million-dollar question for lots of people, because in the past, every single crypto expansion or bull cycle has been accompanied by new, novel crypto use cases that garner a ton of attention and attract huge numbers of new eyeballs to this space. Well, in this video, I want to talk about one major use case that is heating up that could do just that, that could be a major catalyst for the next crypto expansion. And beyond that, honestly, bring crypto to a place of mass adoption where almost everybody uses crypto. I'm going to talk about all this as a blockchain developer myself who works this technology on a daily basis. So if you're new around here, hey, I'm Gregory. On this channel, I turn you into a blockchain master. So if that's something you're interested in, then smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm and subscribe to this channel. And if you want to become a blockchain master step-by-step start to finish, break into the industry, increase your salary well past 100K, I should do that over at dappuniversity.com/bootcamp. All right, so let's jump into this. Let's talk about this next major use case for crypto that could fuel the next expansion or bull cycle in this space. So what is it? Well, in short, it's the tokenization of real world assets. So what do I mean by that? Well, basically, blockchain is all about a way to store value on chain and transfer it digitally in a trustless and decentralized way. Think about any cryptocurrency you have like Bitcoin. Well, basically, that's just an entire network devoted towards transferring Bitcoins and letting people store the value in their wallet where you can prove ownership of that and back up the value on chain. But all it does is tell you what the value of Bitcoin is, and that's at the mercy of what the market decides Bitcoin's worth. That's one reason cryptocurrency is volatile and the price goes up and down. But what if you took a real world asset like a house, for example, or a stock? Okay, there's a lot more established ways to value those type of assets like homes, for example. Home prices are usually way less volatile than something like cryptocurrencies. And while there may be volatility in something like the stock market, there's still a much more widely accepted view on how to value those types of assets, and they have way more adoption than something like cryptocurrencies. So what tokenization of real world assets looks like with blockchain is basically creating some type of digital value of these real world assets and representing them on the blockchain themselves. So we already do this inside the crypto space with stablecoins. Okay, so a stablecoin is basically just a digital dollar. Okay, it's a cryptocurrency that's pegged to the US dollar. Basically, you have a stablecoin issuer that holds dollars or dollar equivalents and then lets you buy and sell, the stablecoin that's backed up to that dollar. That's already cryptographic tokenization of real world assets, which are just dollars. But the real big deal is expanding that to other real world assets and combining them to make novel use cases that we don't already have in crypto. For example, like I was talking about earlier, taking real estate and tokenizing it and putting it on the blockchain so that the ownership could be represented by NFTs or, stocks, which are really just shares in a company, which could be represented by ERC20 tokens. You can even do things like fractional ownership of real estate with ERC20 tokens as well. The list just goes on and on and on, and I'll talk more about those specific use cases here in a minute. Now, I want to say one thing. The tokenization of real world assets has been around the crypto space for a very long time, pretty much since day one. Ever since Bitcoin came out, people started talking about how could we create other types of value on chain, especially when Ethereum came out. We came out with tokens and smart contracts. People were immediately talking about how can we put stocks on the blockchain. But now we're at the point where a lot of this stuff can be much more mature. We've exhausted a lot of the much easier low-hanging fruit use cases. And we're at the point where this really could see an inflection point to get a next leg of real adoption and start to take off. And so why is this such a big deal? Well, like I was saying at the beginning of this video, this could be a major catalyst for the next crypto cycle or the next crypto expansion. Pretty much every crypto cycle has a bunch of common characteristics that make it work. Okay. And one of those big characteristics is the desire to speculate on new assets that have never existed before. So, in past Bitcoin, we had the years where we had all the Bitcoin forks that started going on. So you have these alternative Bitcoins that you could buy and watch number go up. We had ICOs back in 2017 where people were just launching tokens left and right on the blockchain. We had the era of DeFi with yield farming where people were distributing tokens that way. We had the launch of NFTs, or really the resurrection of NFTs, airdrops, you name it. People are hungry drop new cryptos and people are hungry to buy them to speculate on price. And this is a whole new fresh set of assets that people can buy and also make new novel financial use cases, which I'll talk about here in a second. And so in addition to creating a whole new class of assets people can speculate on in a crypto bull cycle, this has the power to bring a lot more, normal people into crypto who may not otherwise participate. So Basically, this could provide the option for financial advisors to recommend a safer path for crypto based on this opinion piece from CoinDesk here. So, I mean, think about it. Things like Bitcoin and Ethereum are definitely having stood a much longer test of time than stuff like Pepe Coin, for example. And, no financial advisor in the right mind is going to say, hey, you should buy Pepe. But I do see a world where things like Bitcoin and Ethereum could be more established recommendations. But alternatively to that, if we see real world assets be tokenized sooner than that happens, it's very easy to see how someone could recommend that, oh, you should just get cryptographic exposure to this type of asset that could enable you to buy into something where the barrier of entry is much higher to you than something like real estate, for example. And in addition to that, you also have the ability to give yield, all right? And people are hungry for yield, not necessarily just speculating on cryptocurrency prices themselves. There's all types of risk profiles in crypto, but yield is a major one. And in the last DeFi, summer era, it was all about yield farming, right? Basically, you just take your money, you park it into an app, it pays you yield, but then it dries up and you got to look for the next one. That's because a lot of the yield is sort of based on what they call Ponzi-nomics, all right? Just wait for the next person to come in, and they're usually issuing a brand new inflationary token that just dumps in price, and you just stop getting yield, so you move somewhere else. But what if you could get into a much safer, long-term sustainable yield where you could increase that to, let's say, 10, 15% with something like this? Well, that's one potential outcome here, is basically having these real world assets where you can do things that have a slightly higher risk profile, okay, with crypto to get that like 10, 15%, but you're not worried about like the token that you're getting blowing up or necessarily the app crashing on you or just completely losing your money or something like that. Now, it's going to take some time before those types of risks are completely eliminated, but they can be much closer with something like this. And it gets us a lot closer to the vision that I see of crypto being a no-brainer use case for the average Joe, where it's like, think about the pitch, it's just say, hey, open up your phone, open up your banking app and see what kind of interest you're getting paid on there. It's usually like, 1% or less. Okay. Interest rates have gone up, so maybe it's a little bit higher, but it's pretty abysmal. All right. And so what if you can say, all right, just download this app, a few clicks of a button, you get onboarded with your phone, transfer some funds, and boom, you're earning 10%. Okay. So we had the promise of this with some of these yield farms, but it's super risky. The yield usually dries up. But if you can get to that point where that use case is much more settled with tokenized real world assets, then that's a no-brainer that could also have pretty much everybody using crypto. All right, so another thing that I want to mention is that this opens up the door for novel crypto use cases, okay? So again, real world assets have kind of been a thing, but now that we have programmable money, we have DeFi, we have all these tools where developers can create stuff, we can start to make new things that have never really existed before, which I'm super excited about. So I'm going to go through some of those right now, and also talk about some cool projects you can watch out for. Again, not financial advice. I'm telling you to use any of this stuff. I haven't personally even necessarily used all this stuff. This is stuff that I've been watching, not financial advice. I'm telling you to buy or sell any cryptocurrency associated with these projects. So here's another example, is basically creating some type of stable coin that's actually backed by real world real estate that's tokenized, but then it generates yield. Okay, so what if you could buy a stable coin where it's pegged to a US dollar where the cryptocurrency is not going to devalue itself, but then that stable coin automatically earns yield, and the yield is not mysteriously coming from like crypto gamblers, okay, or inflationary tokens. It's coming from solid real estate. Well, that's basically what Tangible DAO is working on with their USDR stablecoin. And it's only possible by tokenized real world assets. So the use case I'm definitely interested in is savings and lending. Okay. So basically, we have ways to do this with tokenized real world assets. Okay. So basically we have things like TrueFi DAO, which basically is the DeFi's leading capital market for crypto native and real world credit. So imagine a case where you could actually have your, borrowing history at some point model on chain or some type of reputation. People could do things like under collateralized lending. That's a huge thing that could open the door like crazy for crypto use cases, or if you need capital for a startup or something like that, consumer credit, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Based on their statistics here, they have 1.7 billion originated in loans and 1.7 billion repaid. That's an extremely impressive start, and just something, other example you could use with, real world tokenized assets. Another use case is basically creating, different type of indices for people to invest in, all right, in a decentralized way. So basically think about index funds in the stock market, like the S&P 500, where people are basically just buying into a basket of top performing assets. Okay. So they don't have to pick individual stocks, and they sort of get the average return of all those, over time. So if you were able to tokenize real world assets, you could create your own unique indices that other people could buy into. Of course, it could be some basic fees for performance and that type of thing, but it opens up the door to do this in a decentralized where there's no gatekeepers that anybody can buy into them and just track the price. And that's actually backed up by the price performance of the underlying assets, not just some random cryptos. But it could also back up, cryptocurrencies themselves. For example, this real world asset price index has 22 real world asset governance tokens. So it's backed up by governance tokens. But this is an example of an index that's outperformed Ethereum and Bitcoin since the beginning of the year, with significant outperformance in January and April. And there's so many other things you can do. I mean, we're just scratching the surface. I mean, you could do things like lend money to institutions in a decentralized way. Many times institutions are these massive players, but they're lending to one another. Like somebody over here's got $10 billion and this one wants to borrow $100 million. And so they just borrow from each other, right? But what if you could flip the tables on that, where essentially institutions could borrow from you, okay? But not you don't have enough money yourself to lend to an institution, but maybe 10,000 of you has enough money to lend money to an institution. That's the power of decentralization, is sort of this aggregation of the crowd, and then each person who participates could get a cut of the profit from that type of endeavor. And you could get so weird, like you could go way out of the fringes of like using crypto assets as collateral for real world purchases. I mean, what's to stop you from using like a CryptoPunk as your collateral or, down payment for like a house or like a construction loan or something like that, like to prove that you have the assets that they could potentially go after if you were delinquent on payments or something like that. And you might say, that's really strange. Like, who on earth in their right mind is going to loan you money based on the value of a CryptoPunk? Well, what if you could actually enforce the rules in a decentralized way, where the thing that you're getting has ownership with NFTs, and if the CryptoPunk drops in value or your default on your loan or something like that, then they seize the ownership, which is basically just transfer the NFT back to themselves. That's the crazy future that we could potentially live in, and things could get really weird really fast. Now I know there's going to be all kinds of objections and instant red flags that people have to this type of thing. Like, okay, when we start coming up with all this crazy crypto stuff, there's going to be these really insane people come in and then make everybody lose their money. I'm with you. That's probably going to happen, right? You think about things like Terra Luna, algorithmic stablecoins, it got everybody super excited. And then this was sort of the last one that sort of took everybody's money, and then they completely lost, and it was a horrible thing for the industry. I'm with you 100%. It's probably going to happen again with something like this. But that's the nature of crypto. It's the Wild West libertarian free market with lots of gamblers inside of it. I never participated in Terra Luna, never promoted it on my channel. I don't focus on that type of stuff, but I do cut through the noise. And that's one of the values of this channel, is I try to show you what's actually important in this space, to see that there are a very small set of use cases that will have mature long-term staying power. Happens with every technical expansion. There's a lot of junk out there, but there's also usually a tiny little grain of usefulness in that expansion. And this is no exception. Now, the other big problem that people are going to say about this is the regulation. Okay. There's a reason we haven't been tokenizing stocks on the blockchain. There's a reason we haven't been putting real estate on the blockchain, because there's things like securities laws. Now, again, I'm not a legal expert and all this type of stuff, but I'm with you 100%. That's been one of the biggest things holding this back. The technology is not really a bottleneck. And I do think we'll see things like tokenized stocks probably take a backseat for now because of the regulatory concerns and like that. But again, not a legal expert, but my understanding is really what you have to do is you just have to comply with securities laws, which means if you create a tokenized security like that, then you have to jump through all the hoops of registering with the SEC. Again, I don't know if it's going to get approved or not. And then you have to comply with everything from that point. And then anybody that lets you buy or sell that asset also has to register and comply with securities laws in order to do that. Now, that's been a big bottleneck, and most of the industry has tried to avoid that, to basically say, okay, we're going to try to create things that are not securities and distance ourselves from that type of stuff, and then try to outrun this until it bites us in the butt. And we've seen that problem come to light recently with some of the major exchanges. But also in terms of regulation, I still think that we can work out some of this with some slight gray areas with things like real estate, for example. Back in November of last year, we saw a South Carolina house sold as an NFT for $175,000 with roof stock. Okay, now I don't necessarily understand all the legal implications of everything that's happening under the hood with this. I think there's something like it was not a purchase as a primary residence. I think it was an investment deal, and there's an LLC involved where that's got something to do with how the ownership was easier to model and transfer with NFTs. Again, I haven't looked into all the legal specifics about this, but we are seeing people make moves in this space. And I did have a student ask me the other day talking about like, hey, should I even be working on a real estate project if I'm trying to code my own portfolio, for example? Like, who would hire me based on that? I was like, well, don't worry about that. Like, if you code a real estate project, that just shows you're a great developer. But, there's gonna be lots of companies out there that are still working on this, regardless if we're in a regulatory gray area, because here's why. There's a couple options on the table. One, if we get the regulatory clarity, boom, they are at the front of the pack. They haven't waited, and they've got the green light to just scale and pour on the gas, okay? Now, number two is that, tech has always tried to outrun regulations. We've seen this time and time again with massive tech companies in every single technology wave, not just crypto, okay? Where you got a couple options, you can do what I was talking about, or you get so big where it just doesn't really matter anymore. You have enough money to fight the legal issues through a settlement or something like that. Again, I'm not necessarily condoning this type of behavior. There's a lot of unethical stuff that happens here. I'm just describing what's happened in the past and what's likely to happen again, and this is no exception. And so that's what could happen with the regulatory space. Again, not a legal expert here. Some things I think are happening now, and some things will take some time to actually, gain traction and take off. All right, so that's an overview of real world tokenized assets and how this could be a major game changer for the crypto space and could be a big part of the next crypto expansion, the next cycle. So if you want to get ready for the next crypto wave, again, I don't think we have a ton of time. What's the best way for you to prepare for that? Well, that's to become a blockchain developer and work in the industry and increase your income so that you can get close to this space and have a high value skill like blockchain. And so if that's something you're interested in, how can you do that? First of all, smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. That really helps these videos out. Some people learn about blockchain. But after that, you can look at my YouTube homepage. You can find those free courses there. They're like Udemy courses, but they're totally free. And if you like those videos and you want to take the next step, or hey, maybe you want to take a master shortcut entirely, I should become a blockchain master step-by-step start to finish over at dappuniversity.com/bootcamp. You really have to be an expert to get started today. I've helped people with zero coding experience become real-world blockchain developers in a matter of months. So that's all I've got. The next time, thanks for watching Dapp University.